Don't you always want to be the best you can be?
The Frankie Boyer Show.
What is this?
It's more than a lifestyle show. It's a show about living in today's world.
I think something is happening.
Frankie enthusiastically brings an amazing eclectic mix to the airwaves.
You got that right.
One of the reasons she's earned legions of loyal fans is very simple. When you listen to the Frankie Boyer Show, you just never know what's going to happen next. So listen for yourself. Here is Frankie Boyer.
And welcome. It's Frankie Boyer. Glad you're with us today, and joining us is someone that I think you're going to all enjoy this conversation today. Michael Robbins is with us, and it is such a fascinating topic. And Michael, you're a leading member of the board of directors of Glasgow Corporation. You're on the board of directors of Urban Edge Capital hedge fund, and you develop investment models that allow many management firms to invest in large numbers of stocks to produce positive returns. It's also fascinating, and I'm so thrilled you're with us today. As the chief investment officer of 6 large investment firms, Michael, tell us this model and tell us about your new book.
Hi, thank you for having me. Yeah, I've been investing with quantitative methods for a long, long time now, and they're becoming very popular in the news, which is very good. And they're becoming more powerful, easy to use, and also easy to misuse. So I thought it was a good idea to write a book to try to help people understand how to do that and to do it correctly.
Absolutely, because many of us have no clue what you're talking about. So please take us back a little bit and explain, because you're using big data combined with machine learning and AI, and people are like freaked out about all of it. So take us step by step, please.
So yeah, people have been using numbers to invest for a really long time, even before computers were popular. And then almost everyone was using a spreadsheet in the early 90s. Then they became very involved in using different types of statistics. But statistics are pretty hard to manage, and they require a lot of training to use. Now there are these really powerful machines that can create the statistics all by themselves, these machine learning algorithms, these artificial intelligence programs.
Yeah.
And they're really good at coming up with answers, but the answers aren't always right. I'm sure you've heard some of the stories about ChatGPT and how, some of it makes no sense. And that's fine when you're writing a letter, but if you're investing real money, you have to be pretty careful about how you use these things and guide them to give you the right answers and not just one that sounds really good.
Michael, as your role as a professor, what do you at Columbia, what are you sharing with your students about AI? I just want to ask that question because so many of us are fascinated by it. I interviewed a while ago a couple of young men that are using AI technology to help with a medical device that could possibly be a game changer. And it's so exciting. But tell me what you're sharing with your students and what are their concerns, if any.
So yeah, their concerns and interests, I think, are opposite of your viewers. They're really interested and knowledgeable about machine learning techniques, and they just need a lot of help applying them properly to get the right answers. We do have some students doing cancer research with the National Institutes of Health, and they use artificial intelligence extensively, but they're really experts at it. Your listeners, I think, maybe come from the other end of the spectrum, where they might be really interested in using it. They can get their hands on some of the technology through Python or some other widely accessible technology, and then they run the risk of misusing it and coming up with these crazy answers. There's a lot of blog posts and people talking about how to use it, and a lot of these people are either ill-informed, or they just don't have enough time to give a
Yes.
thorough answer. Right? There's a lot of
Right.
very simple examples that you can extrapolate and use for yourself. So I think for people who are interested in it but are not schooled in it, I think caution is really the word of the day.
So your career is so fascinating. You started out in physics, and later worked in electronic warfare. Um, then you transitioned into working as a prime loan and derivative portfolio manager in Washington's Mutual Treasury Department. You've had the most fascinating background, Michael Robbins.
I've been lucky that I've been able to make a lot of the opportunities that I found. Like you mentioned, I was originally a physicist, and I joined Wall Street when computers were becoming really important on the trading desks. They've always been important in the back office, but they didn't really know who to hire, and so they hired physicists. And so I got lucky, and I also got lucky in that the job that I had allowed me to trade all different kinds of things. So when I graduated from that part of my career, I became a chief investment officer because I knew a lot about a lot of different investments. And I continue to apply technology to investing, which a lot of people do, but I might have been in a different circumstance than some others. And that's what I'm continuing to do with artificial intelligence. It's just another technology and evolution in what we did before. But I think people are pretty clear on how it's dramatically changing some things, a little more and faster than we'd like, but certainly with a tremendous amount of power, and it can't be overlooked. And even the average person has access to a lot of these tools and is able to do tremendous things. But I think a lot of people are looking to replace situations that are maybe difficult and cumbersome, when technology generally just makes things more complex and more powerful. We saw it with computers. Computers didn't do away with quite as many jobs as they created. But
Exactly.
those new jobs were a lot more complicated.
Yeah. Yes. A lot of people were afraid of cars driving by themselves.
Well,
And
I'm
now
still afraid of that.
My point, though, is that we've had cruise control for forever, and and there's now a television commercial where the father is showing the young child that he's going around a bend and he's not touching the car, and the car is driving itself. And my point, though, is that it's become part of our marketing culture that we're starting to see this technology taking over.
Yeah, and it's very true that things like self-driving cars may become better drivers than the average person, especially when you include all their distractions and drunk driving and things like that.
Absolutely.
But
I agree with you. I absolutely agree with you. How did you start to use real life people? And tell us a little bit about, it's almost as though you're like a clearinghouse for ideas and then finding investors. Is that a little bit of what you're doing?
Well, I do advise companies on how to invest, especially when they kind of built up their company to where they're pretty sizable, and now they need to do things quite differently than they did before. It's a common problem with startup companies that become real companies, and then their management is really good at starting things up and new ideas, but not quite as good at integrating with the rest of the business culture and doing things in a professional, institutional way. But it also really helps that I have all these students feeding me ideas all the time, and constantly manage their projects. Yeah, I get to see what the mistakes hundreds of people make, and I don't have to make them myself, and that helps me advise people as well. Because I didn't just learn from my career path, but I'm learning from thousands of students.
Do you have a research project that you can share with us right now from your students?
Yeah, we're using AI on quite a few different investing technologies, from predicting price movements in a short-term basis to trying to find new ways to invest and to manage the investments. The traditional ways using statistics are extended in machine learning so that they become a little more powerful. But now that there's these really powerful large language models like ChatGPT, we're trying to harness them. They're
Hey, we've got to take a quick break. Michael Robbins, we have to take a quick break. We will be back in just a moment. Give us the best website.
Oh, my book's website is quantitativeassetmanagement.com, spelled just like it sounds.
And we'll be right back.
Find all my information. Yeah.
And it's Frankie Boyer. Stay tuned. And welcome back. It is Frankie Boyer. Fascinating conversation today with Michael Robbins. Michael Robbins is really on the cutting edge, leading so many in his teams. And he's also, by the way, a professor at Columbia. And we are so thrilled you're back with us. You're just sharing some of the students and some of the things that you're doing with your students, and go back and share a little bit. And you're also, by the way, Chief Investment Officer for Larson Financial. What's more fun for you, being the professor?
Well, I do these chief investment officer jobs for short periods of time, usually to try to build up companies. I actually recently left Larson, and they're a lot of fun bringing companies up to speed. But working with the students is just continually fascinating. They're always bringing new and interesting ideas and giving me new things to work on. So I would definitely say they're both great parts of my life that work together well.
Oh, nice. You were sharing a couple of the stories, and let's go back to how long do you think it will be before we are comfortable with AI in this country?
Yeah, that's a tough one. And I think AI is already pretty much everywhere, right? Netflix and Amazon and all these companies use it, but they use it kind of behind the scenes, and people are not really using it for their everyday lives.
Yeah, tell us how Netflix is using it.
Well, whenever you go to their website and they suggest a movie, they're using statistics about what you like and what people like you like.
That's right, the logarithms, yeah.
Yeah, in order to suggest movies. I think it's a famous urban myth that these sites like Amazon know what product you're talking about with your friend because they're so accurate in finding the things that you're interested in and presenting you with ads, that they're just really effective at using bits of data to come up with a clear picture. And that's only going to get much more pervasive. I think it's more of a privacy issue than anything else right now, that people might get a little weirded out by having so much intelligent software involved in their lives so much of the time. Some people like it, but a lot of people do have problems with it and prefer that things were less powerful and less insightful.
Yeah. I just was watching an ad for Google versus DuckDuck.com, and they were talking about that, about the privacy piece.
Yeah, there are people who use websites like DuckDuckGo and Signal because they believe it affords them more privacy and there's less information shared. It's usually the kind of privacy that is only available when it's not useful. If you're a criminal and you want to hide your information, usually these sites, I don't know about these sites in particular, but companies in general give up your information to the authorities. So it's not really clear to me exactly what the privacy is good for if it's fragile like that. But it will be harder and harder to find. And these sites generally are not as useful as the mainstream sites just because they don't have as many people using them. And so the companies don't have as many resources to build them out and make them competitive. And I think people who want to live the Unabomber life and sit in the woods and not use technology are going to have to make a lot of concessions that people who are less interested in their privacy will have to.
So are we going to see, because the way in which our educational system is right now, our kids, they're not being taught anything. They're picking things up because they're so smart, and they've been exposed to computers for their whole life since they were babies. So are we going to see
level, I think?
Yeah. So when will the school systems catch up, Michael? I mean, come on. They're not.
Yeah. I don't know about the pre-college people, how well that's going to work. I bet there's going to be a lot of things that they can do without programming. But it reminds me of when I started in the business, and I pretty much taught programming to myself when I was a kid. And I was a little worried that the next generation who grew up with computers when they were kids would be so much better programmers. And they're really not. They're no better at it than their previous generation was. People are just people, and some of them like complexity and some don't. And I don't really think that the fact that they're growing up with this stuff is really going to change whether they're going to become experts at it. They will be using it throughout their life, and they'll have a level of competency that maybe some older people will never get. But it would be just that, just competency in using the tools, not expertise. You see it now with people who try to call themselves prompt engineers, who are trying to become experts in using ChatGPT. Well, they're just basically using an appliance, right? They're not learning how to build new models, using mathematics. They're just trying to use technology that already exists. And so they might become more comfortable with that. I don't know for sure how that's going to work. You're going to have to talk to a sociologist about whether they'll be comfortable with machines doing work that people traditionally thought something that we would do.
Are you seeing with your students at Columbia and the creative place in which they see AI, and that it will open up, as you were just sharing, the world of cancer, the world of the future is for me, from where I'm sitting as a layperson, sounds extremely exciting.
Yeah. There's definitely going to be tremendous innovations in medicine and other fields. There is going to be kind of a middle ground, which is going to get left behind, just the same way a lot of artisans were no longer able to do their jobs a generation later. There'll be some people who are file clerks and do some administrative tasks that computers will be able to do. But the benefit will be that we'll be able to cure diseases, we'll be able to fix things, and we'll be able to make things that are much more complicated than they were in the past. And that will open up new problems and new jobs and new tools to manage these amazingly complex things. It's pretty impressive how complex like a modern airline is. And I think that's the launching point.
It's so fast. We could talk to you forever. This has been so terrific. Michael Robbins, thank you so much for being with us, and give us, please, the best website.
So thank you. Please go to quantitativeassetmanagement.com, where you can see my book and podcasts and all sorts of other information, and also about my course at Columbia. If you're matriculated, we'd like to have you as a student.
Wonderful. Thank you so much. And we'll take a quick break and be right back. Frankie Boyer. is Frankie Boyer. And, you know, growing up with Walt Disney and the amazing, amazing impact that he has had on all of our lives, brilliant visionary, brilliant visionary. What we may not know, and I didn't know this until I found out about Disneyland on the Mountain. And joining us today, Kathryn Mayer and Greg Glasgow, who are the authors of this new book. And I had no idea that Walt Disney wanted to take a ski resort area in Southern California and create, was it going to be something like Disneyland on the mountain?
So yes and no. I mean, we call it Disneyland on the Mountain because there was certainly a lot of fear that that was going to happen as far as those who opposed it. But it was, you know, it was going to be first and foremost this ski resort, this outdoor recreation type destination that really kind of showed off nature, wildlife, that kind of thing. But it was really going to rely more on kind of outdoor activities and kind of to show off the pristine area. But it was going to have some kind of fun type attractions and, of course, lots of Disney type magic. So,
Greg, you're a longtime writer and journalist for many publications, including the Denver Post. And Kathryn, you're a writer and journalist as well, and all of your publications, you've been doing this. And you guys are both married. So how did this project come about? Tell us the backstory.
It came about, we're both, you know, sort of Disney people. Kathryn grew up going to the parks and that kind of thing, and she kind of got me into it as we, you know, our relationship developed. And we actually went to the Walt Disney Family Museum back in 2018, where they had a little mention of this ski resort on a giant timeline of Walt's life. And it interested us right away because his partner on the project, as mentioned on the timeline, was a guy named Willie Schaefer, who was actually the ski coach at the University of Denver for many years here where we live in Colorado. Kathryn actually graduated from the University of Denver, and we met working there. So that name really stood out to us. And we started just looking into it and found it was this really big story that involved a environmental battle that went to the Supreme Court. It was like this 18-year sort of saga that went on, and we thought it would make a great book.
Oh yeah, it is a great book. So the environmentalists were, and I'm so shocked because did Walt realize that it would be a problem for the environment, or he was really sick, wasn't he, and much older in the time of this whole thing?
he was, and a lot of the opposition began, there was a little bit of it, certainly at the very beginning, but Walt actually had passed away pretty unexpectedly in 1966, in late 1966, and this was, very soon after they announced this project. So certainly there were some, there was some opposition to it, but it certainly intensified after Walt Disney passed away. So I think that certainly would have surprised him, because he actually, and we talk about this in the book, and we're excited for people who read it to find out more about this, but he considered himself a big conservationist and an environmentalist. And
That's
he actually did quite a bit of work. Yeah, he did quite a bit of work on that side. So that's actually a really surprising part of the story, was he created quite a bit of momentum on that. He created these very popular wildlife documentaries starting in the late 1940s that won a ton of awards and basically kind of spurred a lot of young people to then care about the environment. So then later on, the same people that grew up on these films and kind of credited Walt Disney for a lot of their beliefs, then later opposed one of his big creations.
Right. It's so interesting. I just have to ask you guys, because you obviously did a lot of research on this man, this extraordinary human being. I think he was such a visionary. He really was.
Certainly.
How do you think, Kathryn, he would feel about what's happening today with all of his merchandising and the way in which it is spread and the outrageous pricing and all of that. How do you think he would feel about that today?
What a great question. I don't know. I mean, I kind of go back and forth because, it's certainly so different than what he originally created. At the same time, one of the things that stands out to me and to us is that, a lot of what the company did post his death was kind of stay in tune with Walt, and they really wanted to do things what Walt wanted. And, you walk into Walt Disney World, there's a statue of him there, and we celebrate him a lot, but it would be really interesting to find out kind of, what he certainly thought of how things have gone, because there's been so many different projects that have been created since he passed away, and things obviously have gotten very, very expensive, and unfortunately sometimes kind of prices out the average family, which is really unfortunate.
Yeah. To switch back, I'd love to talk with you guys about, this is really important, is the battle to save the sequoia groves in the High Sierra from Disney resorts, and whatever happened. Tell us a little bit more about the case and where it finally ended up.
Yeah, so the case, once this was announced in 1965, as we say in the book, this environmental resistance began sort of slowly, and it started very grassroots with, different protests, and there was some hike-in protests, there was a movie created, flyers, and things like that. Nothing really stopped it too much, and then when Disney submitted their final plans in 1969, the Sierra Club, which of course is one of the biggest environmental groups in the country then, and still is today, decided to go to the court with this to see if there was a legal remedy, which was sort of a new idea really at the time, hadn't been done too much prior to that. So they filed a lawsuit against the Disney Resort. It's important to note that they never actually named Disney in their suit. They filed it against the government agencies that were sort of behind, the leasing of the land and that sort of thing. And eventually, they won on the first round, eventually on appeal made all the way to the Supreme Court. And then the Supreme Court made a ruling actually in favor of the Disney Resort, but they ruled in such a way that they sort of created this blueprint for groups to go forward with environmental cases and kind of show how they would personally be affected by these. And there was a couple famous dissents in this case that sort of began this idea that the environment, almost could be its own plaintiff, could stand up for itself in court. So it really was a landmark environmental case in a lot of ways.
Yeah. Disneyland on the Mountain. Tell me about the cover, Kathryn. Who's on the cover?
Sure. It's Walt Disney is on the cover, and this is at a scene. Basically, this is in Mineral King, California, where the area where they plan to build this resort. And
how old was he in this picture? I'm sorry. How old is he in the picture?
65. And he died, actually, believe it or not, just a few months after this photo was taken. So this was in 1966. This was his final press conference, believe it or not.
Yeah.
So this was really one of his final public events. And this was at Mineral King, California. They were basically announcing kind of an update to their plans, including the development of this all-weather highway that would have to be constructed. California Governor Pat Brown is also on the cover, as well as a couple other Disney employees, and one of Walt Disney's partners on the project, who Greg had mentioned, Willie Schaeffler. And yeah, this was a really important day of the story, and really in Walt Disney's life, because this was, people were kind of noticing, he doesn't seem well, actually.
He doesn't look well on the cover. He just doesn't look well. This has been so fascinating, guys. Thank you so much, because it's a story that for many of us we never knew, and I love that you're writing about it. It's called Disneyland on the Mountain. And one of the things, before I let you go, whatever happened to the area that he was looking at?
The area really still is the same today as it was back in 1965. Their plans really never got off the ground. This environmental fight just sort of kept delaying things and putting things in limbo. And eventually the area was actually eventually put into Sequoia National Park in 1978 by Jimmy Carter, which is kind of a spoiler alert of how the book ends. But yeah, pretty much today, I mean, there's still a little cabin community there, but really it's remained, you know, thanks to the Sierra Club, remained really very pristine, natural, beautiful area.
Give us the best website.
Excellent. So we do have a website, DisneylandOnTheMountain.com. So it's there where you can find, you know, you could buy the book, find different places to buy the book, and please contact us as well. We'd love to hear from people who have read it and you know, tell us what side you're on and what you thought of it.
Wonderful. Thank you so much. We'll take a quick break and be right back. I'm Frankie Boyer. Stay tuned. Hi, everybody. Frankie Boyer. And welcome back. I have been looking forward to this interview. Joining me today is Tracy Zabar. And for those of you that are savvy enough to live in New York City, you know that name because the most iconic, I mean, is there another? I wouldn't even know what to call it. It's beyond a deli. It's beyond a gourmet food store. It's an institution. It's Zabar's. And Tracy Zabar is with us today. Tracy, you're a baker, a jewelry designer, author of 6 books, including 1 sweet cookie and chocolate chip sweets. Your collections have been sold at Barney's and Bergdorf's and Browns of London and Kate Spade. And oh my God, it goes on and on and on. You were also the jewelry stylist for Sex in the City. You're a food influencer. I mean, it goes on and on and on. And tell us about the cakes from Mrs. Zabar's Bake Shop that are featured at Zabar's in New York.
First, thank you so much for inviting me. So the way that this book started was I knew I was going to write a cookbook that was the 3rd in the series of these cookbooks. And I wanted to write a book about cake. And my point of view is I have 4 brothers and 4 sons and a husband and a grandson, and everybody comes to our house because the food is really good. And I'm always cooking and baking for 20 people.
Wait. One can only imagine your house at the holidays with Zabar's in the family. I can only imagine. Yes. Yes.
Yes. It's so much fun because my boys are very lively and they all have regular jobs, but they're firefighters and medics on the weekend, and one of them is with the FDNY. So there's just like lively and loud, and it's really, really fun. And we have a giant dining room and a giant kitchen, and they only ever want to be in the kitchen. And so if I ever baked, the short story is I was a jeweler from when I was 4 years old. I helped my father. He was a jeweler and an auctioneer. And when I was 49, I was like, enough already. I don't want to do it anymore. So now I only do it once a week. And I went to culinary school not to stand on my feet for 12 hours a day, but because I wanted to write cookbooks because I love to bake. So when we were thinking, my editor and I were trying to brainstorm this book, he started talking about little cakes. And I was like, why would anybody make a little cake? You go to the store, you stand in the kitchen, you bake. It's the same as making a big cake, but like, why would you do it? And then all of a sudden, even though my kids are here a lot, we had an empty nest. My kids are grown up, and we have, salad and a chicken breast we split for dinner. And we didn't want a great big cake in the house that we would eat for 3 days and it would be gone. And then I started noticing a trend. So I was taking charge of ordering for the cake counter at Zabar's. And I started going to bakeries all over Brooklyn and New Jersey and some in New England and Westchester. And I started noticing that people were still buying big cakes, but they were buying multiple little cakes. And I was like, oh, this is interesting. This is a trend. And then I started going to baby namings and showers and wedding showers and different gatherings that instead of a cake, there were little cakes all lined up with like tiny slices already cut in them, and each one had a cake server, and people would take a little bit of this and a little bit of that. And I thought, this is amazing. It's such a great idea, because if there's one cake and it's a coconut cake and you don't like coconut, what do you do? But this way you get a little taste. And so I decided it's a trend. There's hardly any books. There's no books written on this subject, a few small batch baking books. So I was like, okay, I'll write a book. And so I started to explore my favorite cakes. And I will insert that the last two books, the One Sweet Cookie I wrote with the 70 best chefs in New York. And the next one was 45 or 50 of the best pastry chefs all over the country. And so this one, I wanted this one to be mine.
Right.
So I just scaled down my recipes, and I did a lot of research. And I think we probably could have had 3 or 4 more volumes, because there's a million cakes out there. But I just love the cakes. And am I allowed to say that? I love the cakes in this book. And did you pick a favorite of like when you looked through the book? Did you pick something you wanted to make right away?
Oh my God. Everything, but I don't do sugar and gluten. So I take your ideas and I transform them in my kitchen with my almond flour and my gluten-free, sugar-free, and the alchemist that I am, and create as well. Magnificent.
Yes. And I think there's
I do
a couple
everything.
of cakes that have no gluten anyway.
That's right.
Like there's a
Yes.
chocolate cake or two. So you can already have that. And I'm sorry if you can hear my other phone ringing. My child just got engaged 2 days ago, and everybody is calling.
How exciting! No, that's okay. So the new book, though, is just exquisite. Absolutely, Tracy.
you.
It is so beautiful. Sweet little cakes from Mrs. Zabar's Bake Shop, and when one looks at these, you just can't help but say, wow. And what you've done, though, is you've given us an opportunity to create whatever we need to. And the ingredients that you say we should always use fresh, and I agree with you, fresh ingredients that are at their peak now and as we move into autumn. And I love that you did that, this book.
Yes, I am. We have Zabar's. My husband and I are aficionados of farm stands and, local greengrocers. And, it used to be if you wanted a raspberry, I don't mean a parcel of raspberries, a box of raspberries. If you wanted one of them, it will cost you $5 out of season. And now there's lots of fruits and vegetables that are available all year round, but there's lots that aren't, that are only available. So that was why, exactly what you said, I split it up into 4 seasons so you could really
I love it. Hey, we've got to run. Everybody, check out Tracy's website. Go ahead and give it.
TracyZabar.com, and it's Tracy with an EY, or go to Zabars.com and put your email in, and every other week you'll get a different cookbook review and a recipe and a chance to win amazing baskets and prizes from Zabars. Thank you so much for inviting me.
Thank you so much, Tracy Zabar, and thank all of you. This has been another edition of the Frankie Boyer Show. Thanks for listening. Make it a great day, everybody, and as always, smile.
Light up your face with gladness, hide every trace of sadness, although it's here, maybe ever so near. And if you smile through your fears and sorrow, smile, and maybe tomorrow you'll see that life is still worthwhile if you just smile.